In 1579, a ship arrived at the port of Kyoto, carrying an Italian Jesuit missionary named Alessandro Balignano. Among his retinue was a man whose name history almost forgot. He was tall, powerfully built, and he was African, the first African man most Japanese people had ever seen. What happened next is one of the most extraordinary stories in the entire history of the samurai. A man born in Africa, sold into slavery, carried across the world, who somehow ended up as the personal retainer of the most powerful warlord in Japanese history, who was given a Japanese name, who was given a sword, who was given a rank that most Japanese men could only dream of. His name was Yasuke, and this is his story. The exact origins of Yasuke are one of history's great mysteries. Historians believe he was born somewhere in East or Central Africa, most likely in what is now Mozambique, or possibly the region of present-day South Sudan or Ethiopia. The year was probably around 1555. We do not know his birth name. We do not know his family. We do not know exactly how he came to be enslaved. What we know is this: by the time he was a young man, he was in the service of Alessandro Balignano, a Jesuit missionary who was one of the most important figures in the Catholic mission to Asia. Yasuke may have served him in India first, before traveling with him to Japan. He crossed the Indian Ocean. He rounded the coasts of Asia. He arrived in a country that had never seen anyone who looked like him. And Japan, to its extraordinary credit, did not look away. When Yasuke arrived in Kyoto, the reaction was unlike anything recorded in Japanese history. Crowds gathered wherever he walked. Thousands of people pressed in to see him, touching his skin, pulling at his arms, unable to believe what they were witnessing. The crush was so severe that several people were reportedly injured in the stampede. The Japanese had encountered Europeans before, but an African man of this height, this build, this appearance, was something completely outside their understanding of the world. Word reached the most powerful man in Japan, Oda Nobunaga, warlord, unifier, the man attempting to end a century of civil war and bring all of Japan under a single rule, demanded to see this extraordinary visitor immediately. What happened at that meeting would change both their lives. Nobunaga stared at Yasuke for a long time. Then he ordered his attendants to scrub the man's skin, convinced, like many of his court, that the dark complexion must be ink or dye. It was not. Nobunaga, who was known throughout Japan for his willingness to discard tradition when it suited him, was fascinated. He kept Yasuke near him. He learned to communicate with him through translators. He gave him gifts. He invited him to dine at his table. And within months, in an act that stunned the Japanese court, he gave Yasuke the rank and stipend of a samurai, a foreigner, an African, a man who had been a slave. A samurai. What does it mean to be a samurai? In feudal Japan, the samurai class was not merely a military rank. It was an identity, a philosophy, a way of existing in the world that was governed by Bushido, the code of the warrior, loyalty, honor, discipline, readiness to die in service to one's lord. Yasuke received a house, a stipend, and a katana. He learned Japanese. He learned to fight in the Japanese style. He attended Nobunaga at banquets, at councils, at military reviews. He was given the Japanese name Yasuke, possibly a Japanese rendering of his original African name. The Japanese court was scandalized. This was unprecedented. This was unthinkable. Nobunaga did not care. Nobunaga was a man who had burned down entire monasteries of Buddhist monks who opposed him, who had introduced firearms to Japanese warfare, who was methodically dismantling every social hierarchy that stood between him and total power. Adding an African samurai to his court was, for Nobunaga, entirely consistent. He was a man who collected the extraordinary, and Yasuke was extraordinary. For 3 years, Yasuke lived at the center of the most powerful court in Japan. He accompanied Nobunaga everywhere, to military campaigns, to tea ceremonies, to the construction of Azuchi Castle, one of the most spectacular buildings ever built in Japan, overlooking Lake Biwa, its walls covered in gold. Nobunaga was a man who kept almost no one truly close. He was feared by his generals. He was worshipped by his soldiers. He was respected and hated in equal measure by every lord in Japan. But Yasuke he spoke to. The Jesuit missionaries who recorded these years noted that Nobunaga enjoyed talking with Yasuke about his homeland, about the world beyond Japan, about things the warlord had never seen and would never see. In a life of absolute power and absolute isolation, Nobunaga had found, in this man from the other side of the world, something that may have been the closest thing he had to a friend. On the night of June 21st, 1582, Oda Nobunaga stopped at a temple in Kyoto called Honnoji. He was traveling lightly, a small retinue, almost no guard. His most trusted general, Akechi Mitsuhide, had been sent ahead to prepare for a military campaign. Instead, Mitsuhide turned his army around and marched on Honnoji. In the early hours of the morning, 13,000 soldiers surrounded the temple where the most powerful man in Japan slept. Yasuke was there. Yasuke fought. He fought alongside Nobunaga's small personal guard against 13,000 soldiers. He fought as a samurai fights until the position was hopeless and further resistance was only death. Inside the burning temple, Nobunaga, knowing the end had come, chose to die by his own hand rather than be captured. He committed seppuku as the flames rose around him. The greatest warlord in Japanese history died in a burning temple, betrayed by his own general. And Yasuke, still alive, faced a decision. Nobunaga was dead. Yasuke was alive. He made his way to Nobunaga's son, Oda Nobunaga, who was holding out at a nearby castle, Nijo. Yasuke brought him his sword, fought at his side. Nijo fell too. Nobunaga died. Yasuke was captured by Akechi Mitsuhide's forces. What happened at that capture is revealing. Mitsuhide, the general who had just destroyed the Oda family, looked at Yasuke and made a decision. He would not kill him. He declared that Yasuke was not Japanese, that he was an animal, not a true samurai, and therefore had no honor to satisfy and no death to demand. It was the cruelest possible insult, and also, in the most brutal way, the thing that kept Yasuke alive. Mitsuhide sent him to the Jesuit mission house in Kyoto, and then history loses track of him entirely, and there it ends. The Jesuit records mention Yasuke one final time, noting that he was delivered to the mission house after Honnoji. After that, nothing. Did he stay in Japan? Did he return to Africa? Did he travel onward to some other corner of the world? Did he live to old age somewhere, carrying the memory of swords and burning temples and a warlord who had seen in him something worth honoring? We do not know. History recorded him in fragments, a few lines in Jesuit letters, a handful of Japanese chronicles, a mention here and there in documents that were never meant to be his biography. He deserved better. So did his story. Yasuke lived in one of the most dramatic periods in Japanese history, the Sengoku period, the age of warring states. A century of civil war that Nobunaga came closer than anyone to ending. He witnessed the construction of Azuchi Castle. He fought at Honnoji. He was present at the pivot point of Japanese history. But beyond the history, Yasuke matters because of what his story tells us about the world. In 1579, a black African man was made a samurai by the most powerful lord in Japan, not because Japan was perfect, not because the world was fair, but because one extraordinary man encountered another extraordinary man and recognized something worth honoring. Yasuke's story demolishes the idea that the ancient world was racially homogeneous. It demolishes the idea that black history is only Western history. It places an African man at the center of one of the great civilizations of the East, not as a curiosity, not as a footnote, but as a participant. A warrior, a samurai. History is full of people who deserved to be remembered and were not. Yasuke is one of them. He crossed half the world. He stood in the courts of the most powerful man in Japan. He was given a sword. He used it. He fought with honor at the moment his lord needed him most. And then history simply stopped writing about him. We don't know where he went. We don't know how he died. We don't know if he ever found his way back to wherever he had first called home. What we know is this: for a few extraordinary years in the 16th century, a man from Africa became a samurai in Japan. He was real. His sword was real. And the world he walked through, the burning temples, the golden castles, the courts of warlords, the roads of a country in the middle of finding itself, was real too. We owe it to him to remember it. His name was Yasuke. Say it.